Okay, and I do want to acknowledge all the individuals listed there and many more because this is all this work has been a group effort and just bouncing ideas off each other like we are in this forum. So many thanks to many people. All right. So the things I'm going to talk about today are just overall how the use of the Veggie meter in public health nutrition studies is really just taking off, and how we do need to make sure we've established validity and sensitivity of the device, and just go over a few limitations. And I think everyone on the call here on the webinar knows the limitations and the strengths of the Veggie meter, but we can kind of brainstorm through some of those, especially in the public health nutrition research context. So I didn't know how much detail to go into here. I recognize many of your names and your work. So, I mean, there's little that I need to say probably to justify these studies, but basically we know that we need to increase fruit and vegetable intake in the population, but it's very difficult to measure this. And so our field has been longing for a non-invasive and objective measure of fruit and vegetable intake to really evaluate these interventions and see which ones are most effective so that we can allocate our resources in a wise way. And so the Veggie meter has really taken off in public health nutrition studies to determine intervention effectiveness. We know it's produced by Longevity Link. Virginia was just talking about Werner, who is, I think, a co-owner. I think Igor Armakov also has a lot to do with the Veggie meter and Longevity Link, and it uses reflection spectroscopy to non-invasively quantify skin carotenoids. And many of you know, or probably all of you know, that carotenoids are the colorful substances in fruits and vegetables. So this is potentially really useful biomarker for looking at intervention effectiveness. And it provides a score from 0 to 800. Here's a photo from one of our research associates who sometimes we jokingly say this person really needs to increase their intake. We don't know exactly what a score of 161 means, but we know it's probably not that great. We'd like it to be a little more in the green to blue zone on that little Veggie meter. So many people are using the Veggie meter to evaluate public health nutrition interventions and just in cross-sectional studies. But what do we know about the validity and sensitivity of the device? And so these next two slides are just basically listing some colleagues that I know who have used this device in public health nutrition research. So it's been a lot, and I'm sure we could write a literature review with many more studies listed in it about the tool and how it's been used in public health nutrition. And that might actually be a good idea for us to talk about collaborating on. So anyway, we were awarded an R01 about 5 years ago to look at validity and sensitivity of this device in a really diverse sample, racially and ethnically diverse sample. And so the first aim that I'll talk about is our validity aim. So we looked at the association between RS assessed skin carotenoids, so Veggie meter assessed skin carotenoids, and plasma carotenoids, which are considered the gold standard biomarker for fruit and vegetable intake. And we looked at this in 4 racial and ethnic groups, so African American, Asian, white, and Hispanic. I've listed our eligibility criteria there. And again, this was a cross-sectional study. The next study that I'll talk about is a longitudinal study. This is just one cross-sectional study to look at those associations. And the take-home point is here in this table from our paper. So the Pearson correlation between RS-assessed skin carotenoids and plasma carotenoids, we did transform those, was 0.71. You can see that's the first line. Let's see. Oh, my mouse won't move up there. Oh, well. So the first line in the table. And then one thing I'd like to point out is we did break it down by site, by race, by age, by gender, and weight status. And so you can see the individual correlation coefficients for each of those. And the lowest one is kind of an interesting one. It's in the obese category. So we only had 34 participants in that category, but that is an area for future study. Of course, it's still what I guess we would call a strong correlation, so it's 0.6, but it is a little bit lower than that 0.71 that we see for the total population. So we might want to explore what's going on there a little more. All right, and then just a little something I wanted to point out from a supplemental table in the paper that we could probably discuss a little more, especially since Dr. Casperson is on, is this association between lycopene, which in the plasma, and skin carotenoids. So we looked at the associations between the individual carotenoids in the plasma and overall skin carotenoids. So skin carotenoids, the Veggie meter doesn't give you, a value for lycopene and a value for lutein and zeaxanthin and a value for beta carotene and alpha carotene. It gives you this overall score. So we wanted to break down what was it, because we can break down what's in the plasma. So we looked at what was in the plasma and looked at correlations between those individual carotenoids and the Veggie meter score. And all of them were pretty high, between 0.6 to 0.7. But for the correlation for total lycopene was 0.06, and it was not statistically significant. So we think there could be something going on with that lycopene, and we're working on some additional analyses to try to tease that out. All right, so this second aim, this is just looking at other validity studies and their associations with plasma carotenoids. And Dr. Veggie, also on the call, found a correlation of 0.6 in his sample. Lisa Jans and her group in 2019 found a correlation of 0.7, and then ours, you can see there is 0.71. So I think the consensus in the literature thus far, and there could have been other studies published that I'm not as familiar with at this point, but if you guys know of other studies looking at plasma and skin carotenoids using the Veggie meter, it would be great to kind of add to this and eventually maybe get a meta-analysis going to look at that correlation. But it's pretty strong across these different groups. Okay, this is aim 2. This is our sensitivity study. So this is where we looked at the Veggie meter or RSSS skin carotenoid response, the scores of the Veggie meter compared to plasma carotenoid responses. And this was over a 6-week intervention. It was a carotenoid containing juice, and individuals were randomized to receive either a placebo, so they got apple juice, or carotenoid rich juice. It was an orange carrot juice. And this was over 6 weeks. And we had really excellent retention. Out of the 162 that enrolled, 158 completed the trial. These were individuals of those same 4 racial and ethnic groups mentioned in aim 1 and had similar eligibility criteria to aim 1, but they also had to be able to tolerate the juices, obviously, and not be taking any kind of strong carotenoid supplement, anything over 2 milligrams per day. And so this is our flow chart from our paper. You can see about 53 were randomized to control to the moderate dose, so that was 6 ounces of the orange carrot juice, and 56 were randomized to the higher dose of the orange carrot juice, so 12 ounces. And then you see that of those that was 162 individuals randomized, 158 made it through the trial. So that was pretty good. This table basically shows the responses, and I wish I had my mouse, but I will ask you to look at the column for week 6 under high dose model 1. You can see there was an increase of 123 units on the skin carotenoid scores, and that was the mean for the group. And we saw the same thing using a slightly different model that had a few different additional covariates in it. So we did see a very significant and strong response to the intervention when we looked at skin carotenoids. And then this is the figure from the table. The A and B are showing the skin carotenoid response over the 6 weeks. And then C and D are showing the plasma carotenoid response over the 6 weeks. The difference between A and B is B is a change variable, and between C and D, D is a percent change variable. So this was, I smiled a lot when we got this nice pretty chart or graph. So I do want to mention Dr. Casperson's study. She published it before we did. And they used a lycopene-rich juice. And Lisa Jans, I know, had a lot to do with this study because she was the one who kind of mentored me and helped me um, design our study. And so I want to give a lot of credit to her and to Dr. Casperson. They found that it was also, the Veggie meter was also sensitive to change in carotenoid intake when they used a lycopene-rich juice. And so we used a beta carotene-rich juice. And so I just found it interesting to kind of break down the carotenoids in the two juices and look at the responses. And so this is another place I'd love to get your thoughts, Dr. Casperson, on this, where we see like in our juice, we had about 5 milligrams of beta carotene, about 3 for alpha carotene, and very, very little lycopene. We saw this strong response to skin carotenoids over the same amount of time that you guys' study was. So you guys had the majority of the carotenoid being lycopene in your juice and saw a similar response from 6 weeks or baseline to 6 weeks. So again, love to get some discussion around that and what does that mean about lycopene. And I will keep going. We just have a few more. So limitations and strengths. My sister sent me this picture last week. This is a Dollar General in Eastern North Carolina. And this has to do with the second bullet under limitations. So the first bullet is basically, this tool is a physiological measure, sort of. And so people are like, oh, are you taking my fingerprint? You know, there could be some suspicions to what it's truly measuring. And so sometimes we have to have creative ways to get over the apprehension that people may feel. It assesses intake of carotenoid-rich fruits and vegetables. And so a lot of these interventions in corner stores and other places are offering fruits and vegetables, but they may not have carotenoids. So in this Dollar General, they had bananas. I think I see some onions back there and some other things, but that is one limitation in terms of public health nutrition studies. The validity and sensitivity of the device, especially among participants with obesity, requires further study. Also, I alluded to the issue of the responsiveness of the device to different carotenoid species, so lycopene versus beta carotene versus alpha carotene versus lutein zeaxanthin. This kind of thing requires further study. And then just to give a shout out to Dr. Sisson, in her next slides, reliability is not well established. However, I think a lot of us can attest to the strengths of the Veggie meter. It's portable, non-invasive, it's objective, it's quick, and now I think we can safely say it's been validated in diverse populations. However, I will say that there have not been any validation studies using excised skin and HPLC. So I think that would be another limitation to our study. We looked at plasma carotenoids for a really true, strong validation study. We should have taken skin biopsies, but I was not brave enough to propose that. So I am finished and we can open it up for questions.